Our conversation continues, and now we have Wakili William Ochieng in the studio as we are threading the issues of multilateralism. We talk about it. It's a global village, but is everybody in the village the same? Everybody in this village is everyone the same? Where pick a line kwanza pale.
Ingiani buses.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Let's start with the quote by Jano.
Yes. Today's quote is by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who we all know as a Kenyan writer and critic, a cultural critic. In 1993, he said, "You cannot build a nation by erasing the faces of its people." How do you translate that when you hear that?
Well, basically, what Ngugi is trying to say is that people must be involved at every given stage of decision making. And I believe that as a nation, we have tried to put that into our constitutional culture. And now we are saying that every other aspect of everyone's life, we must have public participation. And basically, you can't ignore any other sector of the economy. You must involve people. Yeah.
By leaving out one sector, you are erasing it, essentially.
Sure.
Or by leaving out a certain demographic.
Yeah. True. Very true on the erasure. We've been discussing the way the world works and the inequalities therein. But double standards they're a fact of life. It's okay. But what are the most glaring double standards as far as the way the world operates from a trade perspective, from a justice perspective?
Yeah, basically, if you were to discuss multilateral double standards, I would discuss it in three broad matrices. One is international law, two, diplomacy, and three, global governance. And global governance generally in two aspects. One, the global political ecosystem and the global financial ecosystem. So if we are to discuss, for instance, international law, we are to look at how are we enforcing international law generally. And then in international law, we have very cardinal principles, what we call peremptory norms of international law under the doctrine of jus cogens, where we are saying that countries have come together to agree that 1, 2, 3 are principles that we are going to abide by, and that the international community of nations have come to consensus that these are non-derogable, these are non-negotiables. And for instance, we are saying that if we are saying that countries are sovereign, then no any other country should interfere with the sovereignty or the sovereign powers of another. And if we are to look at, for instance, international crime, for as an example, we are saying that we have the United Nations Charter, which discusses international crime, and we have signed the International Criminal Court Charter. But then if you look at the countries that sit at the top echelons of global political powers, for instance, if we were to look at the United Nations Security Council, we have 5 permanent members. China, we have the United Kingdom, we have France, we have the United States, and Russia, the Russian Federation. And when you look keenly, you realize that 3 out of the 5 have actually not signed or ratified the International Criminal Court Charter. So we are saying that if we are, how then are we going to hold them accountable in the global pedestal in international crime? For instance, if the head of the Russian Federation were to conduct genocide, how are we going to hold him accountable when he's not a signatory to the ICC charter?
So are you not compelled to be a signatory?
No.
You are not. You basically
volunteer.
You volunteer.
Yeah. Some countries probably just ratify, but then sign, but then they fail to ratify.
What does ratifying mean?
Ratifying means that you make it part of your laws, and therefore you are bound by the dictates of that particular charter. So these countries, so the glaring double standards actually manifests, because if we are saying that an African leader, for instance, has disobeyed this particular charter, and therefore we are calling upon the ICC to press charges, against that particular leader, how then are we holding the others at the top echelons accountable? That is a glaring double standard.
So
an example.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton signed the Rome Statute in 2000, but America has never ratified it.
Yeah.
So when they sit and have tea, akiulizwa mbona hujaratify anasema sijisikii.
No. The country has not, and they've talked very strongly against it, against this, coming after us.
Right. Yeah. Which, anyway, we'll get into how do we fix this later. But I'm like, you've refused to ratify some of these things, but then you still have like veto power at the UN Security Council. If it's a give and take, if you're refusing to give, then this should be taken. But please go on with the double standards.
Yeah.
I know they show us themselves a lot with prosecutions, like you said, but go on.
Yeah. So that's basically on the international law perspective. But then if we are to look at diplomacy, for instance, and we are saying that various countries have an equal stature in the global stage, equal in quotes, because countries that are really having muscles, financial, political muscles, call the shots. Right. They actually determine who leads where, and for instance, if we were to discuss humanitarian aid in probably countries that are war-torn currently, are the permanent members, the powerful political elite countries focusing, for instance, in Africa. We are having aid in probably Ukraine and in the Gaza Strip, but we are having war in Congo. Are we having equal interventions in those areas? You realize not, because the superpowers are not concerned with Congo. It is not one of their priorities. And why would then, for instance, the United States not call out Israel when they invade other countries in the Middle East, when there is constant war in Gaza that is fueled majorly by Israel? And when you look keenly, you realize that Israel is actually their trading partner, actually a huge one, because I think it's in the top 30 trading partners of the United States. So those are double standards that are glaring in the diplomatic space.
Right. And especially when it comes to weaponry, and I don't even think it's top 30, it's maybe top 10, but we'll have a look. The amount of weaponry that goes between those two countries. And it's like, even if you are not part of a war, again, there's proxy ways in which you are part of. Are your weapons being used there? Are your funds being used there?
Yeah. And recently, much recently, you've seen what happens in Iran, for instance, where the United States is saying they are in the process of acquiring nuclear weaponry. But then when you look at deeply, you realize that is a smoke screen, kind of way to just invade in support of Israel. Because I think last time I checked, the United States itself, actually, Donald Trump's secretary, actually confirmed that there is no basic evidence that can show that Iran is actually in the process of developing nuclear weaponry. But then it means, therefore, that the invasion by the United States was unjustified. And these are key diplomatic issues that the world must start to talk about, because we are seeing open bias and double standards. Yeah. So also...
General is compute, yeah.
Also, if you were to look at, so I said I would discuss this in international law, diplomacy, and global governance. So if you were to look at global governance, and let's talk about the global political economy. We know that our politics, the shots are called from London, the New York, and probably somewhere in China. the global superpowers are controlling our politics, especially in the global south and more particularly the African continent. They get to choose who leads and who gets out of power at what time and then who gets into power, because they want to protect their cardinal interests, be it trade, be it political interventions, be it military superiority. So they want to control that, and they want to ensure that those that come to power are those that they can call to order.
That's often said anecdotally,
yeah.
but yeah, is there evidence to back that up?
You see, you went to media school, and evidence evidence sometimes is not in black and white.
The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
Correct. And in law school, Janet went to law school.
I went to law school.
Oh, you didn't?
No, sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were saying, Janet, you went to law school. I'm like, did I? Another life. Go on. Go on,
sometimes evidence could be circumstantial. And not in black and white. So I mean, but these are things we see. We see how global politics operate, and you can point out that this is influenced by this. Yeah.
I'm thinking through how much of it has to do with economic power, because what we can see in black and white is the imbalance as far as our economies are concerned. How much of it has to do with economic power, and in an ideal world, what does a level playing field look like from an economy perspective?
So you just basically look at, for instance, the global financial system, the lenders, for instance, International Monetary Fund. Look at the interest rates that they're lending to, for instance, the continent of Africa, the countries in the African continent. Look at the rates they are giving those countries, and look at the rates, for instance, they are giving the others. You'll definitely clearly show that there's an imbalance. For instance, the loans we get, the rates are so high, so we are indebted for a long time to a scenario where we are constantly controlled by debt. And when you look at those that call the shots at the table of international financial system, you then come back and realize that they're the top nations. Yeah.
And it's been like this for a while.
Yeah.
They established the Bretton Woods institutions to first help themselves, and then to see, okay, they realize, well, this can also be a tool to exert power and influence everywhere else in the globe. So all you other guys come in, join in as members. As we keep talking about restructuring the global financial structure and systems, should we also talk about even talking about the contribution to it? Because see, one of the arguments that will be made is, so you guys are making noise about UN. Who maintains the UN?
Zero. Absolutely nothing.
Kazi yako kwa hii sherehe ilikuwa kuchinja. I bought the goat.
Yeah.
Well, because you tethered the goat to the apple. Did you contribute equally? Same thing with the Bretton Woods institutions.
Yeah.
So
You're
who
actually
actually puts in the money into these institutions, and you smaller countries, yes, you're members. Yeah. You have to join the board. Yeah.
So I mean,
what's your shareholding?
My answer would be in completely different perspective. And I would discuss, for instance, climate change. In 1992, we had a convention, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is basically the parent treaty to the Kyoto Protocol that was signed in 1992, and also the Paris Accord of 2015. Now in Paris, I think about 195 state parties signed to to ensure that we reduce the harm on the ozone layer, the climate effect, the devastating climate effects, and that we reduce the global warming to about 2 to 1.5 degrees Celsius above industrial levels. And this was a commitment that was signed by nearly all state parties.
Yeah.
But then you realize that the greatest contributors of global warming and generally negative effects of climate change is in the global north. And these are the Western nations, which again, as I've said, sit at the top of the political power structures. So the African continent, or basically the global south, when you look at our contributions to the effects on climate change, they are very minimal. But the biggest contributors told us that they are going to finance the mitigation measures. But have they lived to those promises? Have they lived to the standards of keeping the climate change effects low? They haven't. And they have actually not also lived to their promises of financing this. So even if we were talking about financing the general grant scheme, you realize that Africa is actually living to its standards. In fact, and I've seen various African countries taking this seriously. I think home, we said we are going to plant, was it 5 million or 50 million trees? 15 million trees.
Billion.
I don't know if that is...
Billion.
15 billion.
Yes, 15 billion.
Trees. I don't know if that is true or it was, you know.
It's true. It's in paper and everything.
But I believe that the African continent is taking part actively in ensuring that we reduce the effects of climate change. But I actually also equally believe that the global north and the superpowers that are the biggest contributors are not living to the standards that we have set for them, or which they set themselves in the COP21 in Paris.
I see it, by the way, as another, in some conspiratorial way, the climate conversation, yes, it's a good conversation to have. It's a way in which all of us should address it, but also it's become a tool in such a way that when Africa thinks industrialization, climate is brought in. Oh my gosh, sorry. So, you know, you need energy. But no.
Don't say it, Eric. Don't say coal. God, don't say...
Because their energy is so dirty. The guys who are telling you this have not stopped using that so-called dirty energy. They're still using it to maintain their strong position in the economy. And so on and so forth.
I have to push back on that one. It's okay to skip some parts of the process.
So,
It's okay to skip the dirty energy phase of the process.
It's okay to skip it. And that's how you skip it. You skip it by using it in a better way than they've used it.
But you know where now...
But not use it altogether.
Yes.
Not... Still be progressive without necessarily being harmful.
Yes.
But I think, to your point, it's whatever sounds progressive. No. Let's rethink. Let's redo.
You've got to think about how you.
I see what he means about it being weaponized for sure.
Yeah, but
and we talk about even carbon credits.
Yes.
On the energy one, I'm like, that is not an excuse to use coal. It's okay to skip over some, just because some babies crawl and then they walk. Others just take their first steps. You don't have to do.
So let's do this, Mariam.
Okay.
Let's stop flying and using cars. Let's it's because
first of all, we're already moving to electric vehicles
and doing large scale farming of cattle. You know what cattle does to the ozone layer?
No, because it's the way they farm cattle that's problematic.
No, exactly.
It's the way they farm
so
cattle.
Blanket using it.
Okay.
But you know where the double standards come in? Yes. The United States, which is actually the biggest, I believe the biggest contributors, has now proposed actually to withdraw from the Paris Accord. In fact, in January next year, they are leaving the accord. They have said they are not going to be part of it. So in the Obama administration, for instance, when the United States made this commitment, they made a commitment to send in $3 billion into the Green Climate Fund. So the Green Climate Fund is going to lose $3 billion in contribution from the United States when the United States finally exits.
Right.
So, I mean, we are talking about commitments to reducing global greenhouse gas emissions and all those, bad gases that then affect the ozone layer. But then the biggest contributor quits. So what does that tell you?
There's nothing you can do about it.
But I was going to ask, are there any legal tools that exist
that can force them to
and to roll out the things that they say they'll implement? Do we have?
It's an agreement event.
You see, this is an agreement you signed, but you have left the agreement. So you are no longer bound by the terms and principles of that agreement.
Quick one. Even when you are, sorry, Jano, even when you are bound by the agreement, because we've seen, again, treaties, charters being ratified, everything, but enforcing is an entirely different story.
Yeah.
What does enforcement look like realistically? Is there a world where we could actually enforce this? Because international law seems to be, it's kind of holding us together, but at the same time, everyone understands that it's almost, for some people, it's almost optional, right? So is there a way to actually enforce outside of, I know sanctions is usually the first one that people go to, but outside that, because Kenya, for example, cannot sanction global powers. We are the ones who will suffer, not them. It's true.
You see, every time you sign a charter, a binding charter, they're usually protocols antecedental to that particular charter. And in those protocols, then countries come up with ways and means of enforcement. But then if a particular nation then decides to leave the charter, it means then that they are not bound by those particular enforcement measures. And therefore it becomes generally difficult because there is a legal vacuum there for enforcement. And therefore it becomes a difficult, an insurmountable avenue, because you cannot hold me liable or accountable within a particular structure that I'm not part of. So that is where we are having a challenge.
But also, there's a power issue.
Value.
There's a power value here. If a smaller nation were to be found to be flouting an agreement that they have not signed, they'll be compelled to live by what everybody else has agreed to.
That is the double standards we are talking about.
That's it, right?
And even if you were to talk about democracy, we now have global moral police on democracy, and this is democracy by their standards. Our standards do not matter.
Right.
And when you look at their allies, you realize that the democracy that their allies practice and which they cannot talk about is completely out of the world. Because if, for instance, you are saying that, and this was an issue some time back with Zimbabwe, for instance. We were saying that the late Mugabe is a dictator and he stayed long in power. But just take a closer look at China, for instance, or even Russia. How long have the leaders stayed in power?
Germany.
Do we have...
No. In this particular case, for those two, we call them dictators as well.
Wow.
In a particular instance, we here being the West.
This is
That's true.
So the ones who demonized Mugabe,
Yes.
will be quick to demonize those ones. But then they'll not talk about these other kingdoms where you call about kingdoms.
Yeah.
And, heads of state will stay until they die.
Right.
But they'll come into Africa and talk about this last absolute monarch in Africa and look at the backward practices they have, parading girls.
Parade.
So
Oh
can
my
pick a
God.
wife.
Hey, Eswatini, what were they celebrating the other day? They were celebrating something. But you're right.
Yeah.
When it comes to the democracy, though, here's my thing. there's something about copy pasting what has been given to you. They figured out democracy for themselves. They wrote it down. They know what it looks like. They have built it, refined it over time from the Romans all the way now to how we practice democracy. So they are the custodians of democracy, more or less, unfortunately. Now, if we want to take democracy and call ourselves democratic governments, then I don't see how we can then refuse to be held by their standards unless we've created our own. Unless we've said, democracy, the way it works for you, is not the way it works for me. Mine is more clan-based than one man, one vote. So let's tweak it, make it work for me. That makes sense. But as it stands, we've not sat down and said, for Africans, for Kenyans, this is what democracy looks like. We just copy-pasted. So then if they hold us to their standards of democracy, issue iko wapi?
Who are they to hold us?
I don't, yeah, who
Because
are they?
it's literally their thing.
It's their version.
They're the custodians of this thing.
Listen, we have not listed from them. We have not bought it from them. We have just taken. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and by taking doesn't mean that they hold IP, so they'll come and keep monitoring and checking whether you are living by the...
I feel like that's exactly what they do.
Kind of.
And it shouldn't be.
Yes,
but
it is.
here's the thing: if you're doing something, if you I want to use another example. You take my recipe, and you call it biryani, chicken biryani, but the way you're making it is like a pilau. And it's my culture, it's my everything. I tell people I make a good biryani, but then they go to Eric's and biryani.
They find a biryani which is a pilau.
Which is a pilau.
Okay.
I have a right to come and to tell people, one, that's not biryani, that's pilau.
Okay.
I don't know what that is.
You can tell people. Don't tell
And
me.
to say,
If I
recipe.
decide to call ugali biryani,
Yeah, it is my biryani.
my biryani.
So your point is we shouldn't accept it.
Exactly.
They should
I
keep
mean,
off.
we had our democracy before. I mean, we were electing our leaders. I mean, the African structures, we had structures in our African societies. We were electing our leaders. We were being led. I mean, and by the way, before colonization, we did not have political uprisings. I mean, because we understood our structured democracy as per the African standards.
Yeah.
And we didn't have issues with it. This other one, we did not borrow it. It was forced on us. You understand? And even if now we were to take it, Americans themselves, in the Declaration of Independence in 1776, said that among the very key fundamentals, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And therefore, according to them, the founders of the dream, the American dream and independence, believed that everyone is created equal, right? So then, if we were to adopt this particular democracy of the West, why then again do we have equals and unequals on the table of discussion on democracy?
That is very fair. My only pushback will be, until we create something that is ours, I can see how they'll still be dictating how to do this democracy thing, how to do this international cooperation thing, how to do this.
It's
because
their terms.
Yeah, it's their terms, it's their table that we are coming to.
Which brings me to a question. Sorry, a question I wanted to ask is then what is the recourse? You know, in my head it's like, okay, granular. Citizens, countries, what recourse is there against multilateral bias? It's a big question. But we can have this conversation and then say we had the conversation. But did we think through? You had raised a question maybe that we didn't talk about, which is what other people are doing. Because it's really about this famous statement of taking back your power. But it's not easy.
Take back your power.
It's not easy, especially if you're so entangled in somebody else's.
And also if you don't know what power means.
There you go.
I'm going to read you a thread of a tweet by So Kenya has sat in the UN Security Council, right? And the person who was our representative in the UN Security Council is called Ambassador Martin Kimani.
Yeah, very great.
He's really very, very active on X and in conversations. On the 1st of September, the African Union Political Affairs, Peace and Security Council was meeting in Nairobi. The high-level panel officially seated in Nairobi to review, recommend, and recalibrate Africa's governance, peace, and security architecture. See, that's what the AU is doing, right? They're already moving towards this direction, and they were meeting in Nairobi to discuss that. Ambassador Kimani made some comments. He said the panel should be drawn into a discussion on grand strategy by asking what similarities are there between 1884, when the Berlin Conference partitioned Africa, and 2025. Then, colonial powers had established weaponized ports to dominate trade and project power inland. In 1884, each of the continent's kingdoms and nations faced the coming conquest alone, with no shared political identity and no framework of coordination. Their fates were decided by a panel in Berlin. That a panel of Africans now meets in Nairobi shows how much has changed. The scramble then was for ivory, rubber, and gold. The scramble today is for cobalt, lithium, and data. The essential question is unchanged. Who captures, by force or scheme, the value of the continent's resources, and who dictates the rules governing their movement and markets? Today, the contest is being waged through ports, extractive corridors, digital arteries, and security partnerships. Africa must establish clear line of sight over these systems and how their separate actions and dynamics combine into a strategic picture of threat and opportunity. Additionally, this panel should respond to how Africa's lack of continental capabilities to defend subsea cables, deploy joint satellite platforms, or control continent-wide media systems means it can be made as blind today as it was in 1884. Great and middle powers are already moving across these lifelines in parallel, competing ways, some through trade and digital partnerships, others through regime security deals or covert networks. Collectively, they are setting the conditions for proxy wars and domination. No African country can be sovereign on its own. They need awareness of how their separate dealings, whether infrastructure, mineral or digital or AI, can be part of external strategies of control. What looks like a national gain may over time erode Africa's collective security. The Nairobi panel has a historic opportunity to help defend Africa's independence from 21st century scrambles. The new colonialism is creeping in without announcing itself. The difference today is that Africans can see the whole board and act together to win.
The difference today is
Africans can see the whole board.
And if we act together, we can win.
And winning doesn't even mean delinking. It's really how do you bring your... In fact, taking back power is also how do you share it, how do you bring that to the table? You know, and that's, I think, what needs to be figured out.
I agree. I know you had a thought just before we continue on the statement.
The one by Ambassador?
Yes.
Ambassador Kimani's statement.
Yeah, Ambassador Kimani is a great diplomat. I think one of the best that we've had out there. And his statement is quite heavy on truth. I believe that the African leadership must begin to take very deliberate steps in ensuring that we are speaking with, number one voice at the global stage, and that we are genuinely pushing back. For instance, you not explain to me why the entire continent of Africa does not have a representation in the United Nations Security Council, the permanent membership. Because even if we were to look at distribution of wealth generally, globally, I believe that the continent is one of the richest in terms of mineral resources, and therefore we should leverage on our power, the power of resource, to build a place on the negotiation table. And I think this is a discussion that we've started to have, the representation, and I believe that the global north has started to bulge. They are also joining the discussion on the need and the possibility of the African continent being represented as a permanent membership in the United Nations Security Council. So I believe that would be the very first and incipient step towards realizing the equality and equity that we seek at the global stage. Yeah.
When you think through the changing dynamics of things, which is one, that the awareness that we've all spoken to, people are aware that there's a shift happening. It's also the shift in what is valuable now, and data becoming now the oil, not even next, it's the oil of today. I'm thinking through how we can harness that to help get ourselves out of this
to
cycle.
leverage.
Yes, to leverage, because we've moved from ivory and skin and gold, was it, to cobalt and lithium and data. Cobalt and lithium still feed into data. They're the things that go into your electronic devices. They're the things that go into your phone, your laptop, etc. So I'm thinking from a data perspective specifically, how do we harness that? That's an open-ended question. When we figure that out, I think that's part of the... Is it hosting the data? Is it owning? Ambassador also spoke to, we don't own the sea cables that bring us internet. It seems like a small thing, but that means, yes, we could go dark at any given moment. Literally, the fiber optic cables that lay there. Is that a place to start? For sure. And then now the ownership of the data. And then you think of a continent that is 70% young, you know, average age of 19 for Kenya, and across Africa, it's more or less similar. How do you harness this data into something that you can use for...
How do you leverage? How do you posture yourself to leverage and be like, tunataka hizo sea cables in our name? I think it's...
vile mnaendelea, your average age is going to be about 55 in the next 10 years. Vile si tunaendelea, our average age will be 29.
We are the new world.
All
right?
Do you see?
Your population is dwindling. We shall come and occupy your country. First of all, accept that.
Oh, the occupation is in process.
Yes.
Oh my God.
First of all, accept that.
Okay.
Okay. And that also we shall not be finished here. Even when we come,
don't use occupation, because I think Gaza, use another term, but nimekuelewa. You need us.
Yes.
And that's why the pushback is so severe. That's why you're seeing a lot of far-right groups. The heightened tempers is, we woke up and they're all here. I'm looking everywhere.
What are they
and
doing
they're here? What are they doing here?
But
so it makes sense to what you're saying.
But why do you think that the leadership in those countries are not concerned about sending them away? Because they need them.
Yes.
That is the labor, and it's skilled labor.
And tax.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's cheap labor. So they basically need them. You know, in the colonial stages, labor was taken by force, right? And now the labor has to be paid for.
Yeah.
You get it? Because we said, we said an end to colonialism, even though we have neo-colonialism that is constantly creeping its head. But the playing field has generally been regularized, or the mechanics of that game have changed, and now you have to pay for that labor, and that is why you see some Western nations telling you, we are giving you scholarship, free scholarship, come and study, but as you study, you work, and therefore they're leveraging on that to get the labor.
Yeah.
So that's why they can't send them away.
Although now they're going to probably have to meet their people
because
halfway.
they are not going to have their 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds work in their factories. So they need these people.
Yeah.
So we have started to occupy. So the occupation is real and it's happening.
To Mariam's question, because you asked something about leverage or power. You used the undersea cables as an example. So it's almost like, how can that be a way in which we have bargaining power, right? Or what are the bargaining power tools that we have, if at all?
Aside from this, from our youth bulge.
Aside
raw
from
material. Right? Just like you're saying, lithium, cobalt, and all those things, they are coming from here. And just knowing that, in fact, raw material is everything, because even human capital is just raw material, right? So we have that we have the raw material in terms of what is found on the continent. We have raw material in terms of the humans that are found on the continent, and educated humans who can do anything, and we can do it here. And that, I think, is a strong and powerful leverage, knowing that the other guys need it and they don't have it. They don't have it, they need it. So you have the tools with which to bargain. Now all we need is the cojones to do it.
I agree.
And to stop acting like, your second fiddle and so on and so forth, which brings me back to what I was saying.
Yeah.
Strong and resolute leadership.
Yes.
That comes from the ground up, that comes from everybody, for example, everybody in Kenya seeing that this is what we all need, and having a leader who starts it, and having the people behind to push. Say, this is our guy. Because the pushback will be, no, let's try and remove this one. You see now this one can't do the job.
Yes.
Let's remove. But people saying,
this is our guy.
This is our guy. This is the person that is doing it. If you look at what the West African countries have done with France for very many years, those countries in the Francophone West Africa were sending their money to France.
Yes.
Yeah.
France was banking for those countries, right? And then they came out and said, you know what, first we have to start by cancelling this deal. We've got to look at ways in which now we establish our own central banks and start moving. And then we saw, what we are calling the upheavals, military overthrow of leadership.
Upheaval.
But it's that pushback.
It's a push.
It's a push of leadership saying, this has gone on for so long, but
how are you still taking my money?
Why?
This many years after independence, and we're considering that normal. In fact, it should be you paying me reparations, not this way. The thing
and
is,
you bring it back with interest.
Yes.
And you push and you force.
Yes.
That is already a demonstration of what's happening. And then you can see how those countries have been paraded in the world.
Yes.
They are undemocratic. Let's actually call ECOWAS and tell ECOWAS to tell these countries we are kicking you out because of what you're doing and so on and so on. And they said, kick us out. Out of what? Kick us out. Just like Mugabe said, you're kicking me out of the Commonwealth. It's just a club.
Because really, I mean, what is it? And it's a club where you and your former colonizer get together and drink tea. It's okay.
So to his point, the examples are already there. So now how can that be at scale? I guess we could take that determination of the leaders.
Begins with, when I think of the African Union and its position on the global stage, I don't think it has anywhere near the amount of bargaining power that the EU. William is just.
It's like,
it's as Professor Pielo Lumumba says, it's an annual jamboree of dictators and near dwellers. Nothing
an annual
more.
Jamboree of dictators and near dwellers.
Yeah, I mean it's where people go and have tea and coffee and talk about their personal issues and go back home. Yeah, but you talked about data.
Yes, before we get into the data, what's the fix there? Because there's billions of people on the African continent within these 54 countries. The African Union essentially has some of the richest mineral areas on the planet. When it comes to forestry as well, some of the biggest. So then if it's carbon credits they're looking for, if it is this lithium and cobalt, it's here. So how do we harness that before we get into the data bit?
You see, everything gets back to leadership. If you look at the leadership at the continental stage, you realize that there's a problem. I mean, there's really much that ought to be done that is not being done. For instance, the African Union Commission is doing very little about what is happening in Congo, in Sudan. I mean, folks are sitting in office having tea. There's really no significant efforts being taken to rally the continent behind a decision to ensure that we end the conflicts in Congo and in Sudan. And therefore, for me, I believe constantly that we must first fix the leadership. because if we fail to fix the leadership, then everything else falls flat-footed. And I have a problem with the leadership because you get to realize that we do not actually get the leadership at whatever stage that we want. We get the leadership that other people want. And we saw this even during the African Union Commission, politics, the elections, when we wanted to elect the chairman. And we realized that there are a lot of interference, external interference from various global powers that wanted to tell us that this is the route to go. And why would the other powers be interested is because they are trying to, protect their deeply rooted interests.
Yeah.
And therefore, once we have failed to fix that leadership, then we are not going to move any step in the right direction in ensuring that we fix the continent.
Okay.
So it begins from the leadership. Yeah.
On the data?
And it's how we elect our leaders.
Yes.
It begins with the people then.
Yeah.
It's the people, then the leadership, then we head to
Then the
solution.
Just as we finish, you want to talk about the data?
Yes. We have to control our data if we have to have a say and use it as bargaining chip on the international stage. And controlling our data, we now have a very robust Data Protection Act, 2019. And generally, by international standards on GDPR, I think it's a very good law. And therefore, we just need to follow the law. And if we follow the Data Protection Act within its very dictates, then we are going to have control of our data. Because according to the Act, you cannot, for instance, transfer data from our country to another country without approval of the Data Protection Commissioner.
Yeah.
The Data Protection Commissioner has to give approval, and they have to ensure that before they give approval, the data is going to, the destination, for instance, and most of our data processors and data controllers do not store data here. Probably some of them store data in New York, some in France. So then we have to ensure that where we are storing the data is GDPR compliant. And that I know for a fact that the United States is not GDPR compliant, and therefore you may want to start having questions on where your data processor or data controller, for instance, is storing the data. For instance, if we were to talk about Safaricom, that I think is the biggest data controller now, you would want to know where is the cloud or the storage of our data. Where is it hosted?
Right.
Is it hosted in a GDPR compliant country? And we begin to discuss those issues, knowing that our data is safe. And if our data is safe and we are in control of that data, then we can use data, which is now the next frontier in the global financial ecosystem, and even the global political ecosystem, the next frontier. So I believe with that we can use data as a bargaining chip.
I like that.
Yeah.
The sea cables as well, just even where the data is passing through. If someone can cut off your internet access,
at any point.
You think about it's worst case scenario, but it's very, very true.
Yeah.
Just as we close, a little feedback from our YouTube. Kevin Bratego Omundi amesema wakili wambia Ochieng, sharp and astute as always. Ulysses is asking, assuming we threw democracy in the bin, what do we do? Or we decided to form our own to maybe come to a consensus, right?
If it's the name they want, they can keep the name.
The name.
They can call this thing of ours whatever we want.
Whatever we can.
And roll it out as we wish.
Right.
There's also the comment from Michael Mwangi, right, where he's saying, as we speak of fighting exploitation, the DRC is negotiating a minerals for security deal with the U.S. That would grant preferential access to its mineral resources. So much for fighting back, something we can unpack and dig into and
Here's
see.
but think about it. What would the fix from an AU perspective be if they go to the US and they're asking for minerals in exchange for security? What could the AU do? Because we do have AU troops.
Well, we had two parallel processes on the DRC called the Nairobi process and the Luanda process. Okay? Then we are battling up, these ones are aligning to which faction. Trump calls these guys to Washington and tells them, sign here. I'm providing security. Give me the minerals.
Give me the minerals.
And that's it.
Yeah.
This is where we're talking about.
Yeah, same thing he did with Quad. He's like, hey, naona mnabishana sana. So, let me step in and fix it.
Yep.
You know, it's bypassing. I know we're about to, actually we should say thank you to Akili because we're out of time. Thank you for lending your thoughts on that. I think it's becoming a bigger conversation. So it's about how we still keep it high level but also granular to how it can shift everyday life. And also to Mariam Smith with that, and earlier on the conversation on CRBs. Up next we have, did you say Mwikali is the one who's alone today on Your World? Intertribal marriages in Kenya, love or social challenge? That is the topic today for Your World. We'll also have Vibe Shift with Claudia Naisabu and Brian Aseli on Nation FM. Eric Latif will be with you guys on The Last Word tonight from 9:30.
Yes.
And
Leo
then,
tuna
Rudo are 3.
Rudo 3. Okay.
3 scorecard.
Okay.
Scorecard ndio inakuja.
Alafu kesho atatuambia what was his hot button.
Right.
Because he'll be with us again. Mariam Bisha, Eric Latif, Janet Bogwa. Back tomorrow morning on Fixing the Nation, one conversation at a time. We'll see you then.